Welcome to the Zelos podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. And this week, Christi Edson's in the house with me. She went from sports science to get in the weight room, CSCS with Orlando Pride, National Women's Soccer League. And before we get underway, if you're looking for continuing education workshops to improve your knowledge base, if you're a physical therapist, an athletic trainer, chiropractor, strength coach, or personal trainer, consider going to my website, rockysnyder.com. We've got online courses as well as in-person workshops that we're offering throughout the nation. Just give us a call or check on in, drop an email. As well as check out setantacollege.com. And Setanta, well, they're a place to go for your Master's of Science in Performance Coaching. Maybe you want a Master's of Science in Sports Injuries and Return to Performance Management. They also have one in Applied Sports Biomechanics and Movement Science and Applied Sport and Exercise Psychology. Go to setantacollege.com, add RS10 for 10% off your tuition today. Follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button. Let's go on with the show. Christi, thanks for coming on, Zelos. I just want to jump right in with, well, first, welcome, and once you say hi, let's just dive in and tell me how you got to be with Orlando. So
thanks for having me on for sure. So came into Orlando as an intern. The club started up in like 2015, I think, and then I was pursuing a master's degree at the time, in a nutrition internship came up. So got in with that, had an interview, ended up getting on and was like, oh man, this is like a dream come true, even though it's, nutrition. And I quickly realized that I needed to move my master's degree to online. So that way I could be at the facility full time. I didn't have to worry about leaving for class or anything like that. So switched and finished up my master's degree at Liberty University. And then thankfully, while I was there during the 2018 season, a position opened up and they hired me on. So wow. I got to finish out the season as an employee, which was fantastic. And then just kept on from there. So 2019 got to work with John Grace at the time who was there and taught me all of the GPS and stuff like that, while teaching me a little bit about his philosophy in the gym. And then 2020 coaching change happened, so some turnover happens, and then the GPS is fully in my hands at that point. Finished out the 2020 season. Obviously, COVID year was a hard year, and kind of decided I wanted a little bit more personal free time, if you will. Again, luckily, a position opened up with the Pride. So I knew some of the athletic trainers. While I was working with the men's team, I was reaching out to the women's side, the athletic trainers there, and like, hey, can you figure out a way to get my name like in front of the GM that's hiring and stuff like that? And position ended up in my hands, so got to stay with the hometown club. And now I've been with the women's team since 2021.
And in the role of strength conditioning and sports science?
Yeah. So strength conditioning is my preference, but sports science was kind of how I got the leg in of like, you do the GPS. I was like, okay, that's very interesting. I love the Excel spreadsheets, taught all yourself all that. And then as you get into it, I think you realize, all right, it's more than just Excel spreadsheets. And I didn't have the background for that, but I do have for strength conditioning. So I wanted to get more back into that realm rather than sports science.
All right. So you went to FSU, got your bachelor's in exercise science, went to Liberty, finished with a master's in human performance, made your way on with an internship. And now are you the lead or head strength and conditioning coach for Orlando Liberty? For Pride?
Yeah, so I'm the head strength conditioning and I oversee the sports science, but definitely I've handed off most of the day-to-day sports science, handed that off to our data analyst now. So, but yeah, head at Orlando Pride. So, big role.
This is kind of a dream job then, isn't it?
Yeah, dream job in the pros for sure, but then to be the hometown club for me, growing up around the Orlando area is like I have a stranglehold on this position for now.
All right, and with this, your day-to-day, are you there 7 days a week, 6 days a week? What are we
Yeah,
talking?
our preferred is a midweek day off. Obviously, the heat is something that you can't necessarily factor in or measure. So having a midweek day just to make sure that they're out of the heat, we're not training, gives an extra day of rest and recovery, especially after a gym day. So let's say a typical week is 4 training days and then 1 game day, 2 days off. One right after the game and 1 in the midweek is our preferred week. NWSL isn't as always as nice with traveling and going West Coast or games on, maybe you're going from a Sunday to a Friday game. So it's not always the case that you get those 2 days off in a week, but that's our preferred.
So it's only a weekly match. There isn't a midweek match at all. Like MLS will have usually a Wednesday and a Saturday match. Yours is
Yes.
typically on the weekends.
Yeah, typically on the weekends, we do dip into some Fridays. They've gotten away from the midweek match, so they've really pushed hard. We had 1 this year, where we had a 3-game week, but they've really tried hard on the scheduling to get away from that because it is hard. It's really hard on the bodies, on the travel, and everything. So I appreciate that they've worked hard on the scheduling for that.
Well, and it's easier for your programming, I would imagine too. You're not dealing with like game day -1, game day -2, a couple times a week or so. Now it's almost like NFL conditioning
Yeah.
program. If you've got 1 match a week, then how does that work for you? I mean, like, how do you plan out your programming with 1 match a week?
Yeah, it's much easier. You get that full gym lift in match day -4, which is preferable. Whereas on a 3-game week, you're hitting some isometrics and some power, just keeping everybody twitchy. But you can't really load. I know in like the NBA, they talk about doing lifts and stuff after games, which could be nice on low minute players, but you don't always have the facilities, or the hotel gyms are completely different or what have you. So not quite able to do that for us. So, but having just 1 game a week, you go match day -4, we get a proper lift in. Match day -2, you can hit your power lift, and then you're into the game. Match day -1 is just a kick around, and then match day, you're kind of ready to go. So that's a lot easier on the programming schedule for us for sure.
Now, there's some teams, not in the MLS, but NBA, that actually do a lift day, not maximal or anything, but a lift day on game day.
Yeah.
Have you played around with that at all?
Only for non-roster people, so not something
Okay.
that we can really do on the football side. And so typically only on low minute people we can get a run in. So get a run post game, but they're trying to kick you off the field in 10 minutes, so there's not much that you can do. So you just kind of wait for that top up session when you come back in for those low minute people.
Okay, give me the obvious differences between female professional soccer players and male.
Yeah, for me, what I've encountered is females that I have worked with are asking more questions. So you have to be ready to answer those, and it's not always an offense against the strength coach. Why are we doing this? It's sometimes just more of like, well, I've done this in the past. Why are we doing this exercise? And you just state your reason why, and they go, oh, okay. Whereas with the guys that I've worked with in the past, they just did whatever you told them. So you go, this is the lift on the board, that's the lift on the board, or this is the run that we're doing, this is the run that we're doing. But the women's side, a lot more questions. So you need to be ready to answer those and not be offended that those questions are coming. And then the other side of it is when they ask you those questions and you have that answer, like, just be okay that they might still say, I don't want to do that exercise. So you need to be a little more flexible. So it's really challenged me when I first got here to go, okay, what is the movement pattern that I'm actually after? And can I make an adjustment on the exercise that they don't really like this exercise, and just change the movement pattern to get what I'm after for them. And that's okay. So that's been my experience in the difference between the two sides that I've worked with.
Do you still get a high number of questions now that you have kind of secured your position and kind of allowed some buy-in with most of the players?
Yeah, because there's always turnover, right? So we always get new players in, or they have an injury that last rehab time that they did this, these are the steps that they went through. And I go, okay, that's fair. This is the way that we're going to go about doing it. Maybe, sprinkle in some of the things that you've done in the past that you liked. But this is the way that we feel as our performance department that we want to progress you. So there's always questions, and that's okay. It just solidifies, what you guys are doing as a performance department and why you guys are doing it when you're ready to answer those.
You mentioned patterns. What are the big bucket patterns that you look for in a training program, like a lifting program?
Yeah, for me, it's much easier to think about patterns, and I don't know where I picked that up from, but it's not the exercise itself, but the pattern you're trying to get after. So are you getting something lateral? Are you getting something rotational? Are you getting knee dominant hamstring exercises, hip dominant hamstring exercises? And then sometimes can you combine some of those, right? So if we want a step down, let's say we're really trying to get unilateral work in, can it be a lateral box step down, right? And now we get kind of kill two birds with one stone, right? We only get that one lift a week, and it's 30 minutes maybe. We do try to keep it short because they're coming off of an hour and a half training session, right? So you're trying to combine some of those big movement patterns, big buckets together. But yeah, for me, we just finished off a big hip thrust block, with that, some lateral step down. And then we finished off our Nordics for the year. So moving over into some hip dominant as we kind of get towards the back end of the season.
Nordics for bulletproofing the hamstrings primarily, because you've got a fairly high incident rate across the board, not just, I don't mean your team, but just in the sport itself, hamstring. And so interestingly enough, through my studies too, I'm realizing that hip dominant versus knee dominant hamstring motions are going to affect obviously different areas of the hamstring. So with soccer players, you're typically going to find more distal pulls on the kicking leg, but more proximal for deceleration and cutting and so on. So doing things like the old-fashioned leg curl machine or Nordic curls are going to be great for the distal portion, whereas some deadlift derivative or something of that nature, some squat derivation, is going to be going for the proximal. Do you agree with that? Is that kind of your philosophy as well?
Yeah, so that's kind of the obviously the big topic in football is the hamstring strains and how can we reduce those. And Nordics are the big hot topic right now, but so is sprinting, and so is your RDLs or your deadlifts. So if you can have all of that in your program, then you're probably going to be all right, and reduce most of those irritations and injuries, potential injuries. Now they're still going to happen. You're still playing football, right? But if you get the global approach, you sprint, you get your Nordics, and you get your hip dominant exercises. Hopefully, by research standard, like you're kind of covering all the bases there.
Now, there's a guy up north, Cal Dietz, University of Minnesota, USA Hockey, right? Cal has the triphasic training where he discerns based on an athlete and their assessments if they need more concentric, isometric, or eccentric loading. And so he puts them into 3 phases. I could kind of see that same thing happening with what you just mentioned, whether it's like hip dominant, knee dominant, and sprints. Just to not put you under the hot plate here, but do you have a way of assessing your athletes as to say, okay, you need more sprints, you need more deadlifting or hip dominant hip thrust, you need more Nordic, you need more knee centric kind of things? Do you do anything like that?
A little bit. A lot of that comes from our PT. Our PT is great. So he does really good like gait pattern type stuff, and he'll go, they're really extended, and so you're gonna feel that pulling through the back, pulling through the pelvis, and pulling on the hamstring a little bit more. So he's really good about stuff like that. And we kind of in those situations, we don't change necessarily their whole programming. We just sprinkle in a couple extra things. So maybe in their activation, pre-warm up, whatever term that you call it, they have a couple of specific things, maybe more distal hamstring for them. Maybe they have something more triple extension focused for them, right? So those are kind of the places that we kind of sprinkle in a couple of extra exercises to make sure that for them specifically, they are prepping the tissue to then go out and then train, and everything is firing before we go out there. So that's kind of the global view of it. Nothing gets changed drastically, right? Like, our goalkeepers don't need to do as much on the hamstring side of things. We're getting all that adductor, lateral movement type stuff, but yeah, that has been something that I've been interested in. A lot of concentric, eccentric, isometric, getting into some pulse stuff is some things that I've been kind of experimenting with. So pulsing at or oscillating at a length or depth, and then coming into the full rep. So I've been kind of experimenting a lot more this year, with some of the gym stuff than I have in the past.
Well, you've got a good avenue for getting in there, which is atypical. And what I mean by that is normally the strength coach moves into the sports science realm and starts to really geek out on the numbers and the graphs and so on. And not that they leave the weight room behind, but an opportunity arises, and an opening occurs, and then they're sports scientists, and they kind of just move away from S&C. But you went the opposite direction. So you got into the nuts and bolts, the nitty gritty, the number crunching, and then went back into the gym setting in a way. I like that direction better. How do you utilize what you've learned with sports science to better make you an S&C coach?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I've found that S&C is my preferred passion. Programming, changing the exercises, changing, even getting into long stage rehab, developing a program for them that's 12 weeks, and you don't have to worry about on-field training right now. You just get to program in the gym. That is my passion. And I still have a love for sports science, so I've learned to sprinkle that in a little bit as well. We just got VBT, thankfully, this year, so now I get to have my sports science in the gym, right? Nice. I've passed off some of the field stuff to our data analyst, but bringing back some sports science, some elements, and it's still in there, right? Like, we jump once a week, but so I'm very particular on what days those happen, but the actual analytics, I get to pass off. So it's collaboration between us that's really works well. That, hey, I'm going to make sure that these things happen and that the data is collected properly the way that we want it to, but I just need you to get the visualizations and the statistics for me, because I didn't go all the way down that rabbit hole.
No, that's cool. So when it comes to velocity-based training, how much is unilateral movements versus bilateral movements?
Like, described differently on the VBT, or?
No, I mean, when you look at it, like, I guess in terms of program design, and when you're looking at measuring fatigue and so on, how many unilateral movements do you do compared to bilateral movements? Is it like a 50-50? Is it primarily bilateral and we sprinkle in a little unilateral stuff?
Yeah, I think it's probably primarily bilateral with sprinkled in unilateral. Where I get some unilateral stuff where I'm not looking at the load necessarily, I'm more concerned with the movement. I get that in that activation block, right? So I get them 15 minutes every morning, which can almost be a microdose session if you plan it that way in the gym. So now that's 15 minutes in the morning that I can maybe supplement some exercises that I'm not getting in the one session in the gym session, right? So that morning training, I can work on movement patterns. We can work on single leg stuff, making sure you're doing it properly. And then we can go into the gym session and we can load it. Double leg, can you move it fast? Can you move a lot? And so speed and force coming through on those gym days, whereas in the morning we want to make sure we move properly before going onto the field. So that's kind of how I program the gym compared to the activation. But so yeah, in gym more bilateral, but activation we can kind of get those single leg unilateral work.
Very cool. Other toys that are in your toolbox?
We've got the Vault force plates. So like I said, we get that jump once a week, which is fun to play with. I'm really interested in the counter movement rebound jump. We haven't implemented it yet, but every week when I'm zeroing out the plates, I can just get a counter movement rebound jump myself and see how it feels. What numbers are we getting? So that's kind of fun to play with. The VBT this year has been about intent. not necessarily the specific numbers. And that's been a huge driver in the gym for us. So stereotypically, women don't want to lift the heavy weights. They always go 25 pounds on the bar, and that's where we start. And we go, okay, can we get away from that, and can we focus on how fast you're moving it, or can we focus on the power generation that you have, or can I get you to stay in this zone? And that's getting them to put more weight on the bar and not worry about the weight that's on the bar, if you will. So that's been my big way that I've used VBT this year, and then hopefully we can dive a little bit deeper next year.
How much of a conversation do you have to have with athletes about about just that, about not loading the bar? Like,
Yeah.
my pants are fitting just the right size or whatever. I mean, what does that conversation look like for you?
Yeah, a lot of it is still the typical conversations. I don't want to lift heavy because I don't want to be bulky. Like, well, that's a volume conversation first, and we're not hitting that volume like I'm hitting, in off season. But then it's more conversations of tissue. I'm trying to work on the tissue. So if we keep lifting the same way and you keep having this irritation, then our tissue isn't adapting, and you're not able to do the things you want to do on the field, right? You're not here for me in the gym. You're here for soccer, and this can help you stay on the field because the forces and everything that you're generating on the field, it's way more than what you're seeing in the gym at slow velocities, right? But you have to chase down a forward and then stop really hard because the ball got deflected. We got to make sure that you're prepared for that, and that your tissues are prepared for that. So it's just constant conversations, and that's okay. It's all education, nutrition education, weight room education, right? It's just all education, and hopefully you build that relationship with them throughout the year to sprinkle those conversations in every week, every day. Not something that they're going to get in a one-time lecture.
Sure. But which makes, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the female triad syndrome, amenorrhea, lower bone density, eating disorder. Is that something that pops up occasionally for you? Do you have to address, or is it just little yellow flags that you have to be aware of? I mean, or is it just not something that is part of your reality?
It's there. I think it's called Reds now. Our dietitian has helped educate me on that. But there's conversations about menstrual cycles. Who hasn't had their menstrual cycle in a while? Is that an overtraining thing? Is that an under eating thing? Do we need to have that? Is it just something that we're watching right now, or do we need to take further action? So we have conversations in the performance department all the time about that. And more than just menstrual cycles, like, are you just generally fatigued? Are you not recovering week to week? Okay, is there something that we need to do? Do you just need an extra day, or is there something that we need to figure out more of? We got blood work that happens frequently throughout the season, so our dietitian looks at that, our doctors look at that, and then occasionally we have had to send a couple to go get a bone density scan, just to make sure that we aren't dipping into that red syndrome.
Very cool. Okay. And we've talked about hamstring, kind of bulletproofing it with sprints, hip hinging, Nordics, and so on. What about ACLs? How do you bulletproof? How do you make Kevlar knees?
Yeah, that's $1 million question, isn't it?
Come on, I know you got the answer.
That would retire any of us if we had the answer to that. Yeah, I don't know. That has definitely, I was very lucky my first season, we didn't have any. And then 22, sorry, we had one. And then last year we had two. And as those kind of start to pile up on your resume, if you will, you kind of start to take each one a little more personally, because that's someone's year, that honestly is a full 12 months of that person's career, that is now altered, right? So you kind of go global view. Okay, can we look at their shoes? Are their shoes fitting properly? Can I talk to the equipment staff, right? It's surprising if you just go talk to your kit man. They have like, oh, this shoe is more narrow, this shoe is wider, this shoe fits tighter, whatever. Maybe it's Adidas, maybe it's Nike, maybe it's a different style within Nike that they need to be on just for their foot size. And that's just talking to the kit man. then you can go talk to the groundskeeper. Hey, how often are you watering? Because it looks like we're not gripping as much when we try to change directions. The ground is sliding away from us. Maybe we back off on watering so the ground isn't as soft and soggy. As a groundskeeper, then we could talk. Let's talk about menstrual cycles, right? Little joint laxity, little tendon laxity, as this cycle, as they go through their cycle. You could talk about strength, right? There could be a conversation on just general strength. If this, tiny centimeter ligament is popping, is something else failed in the system, right? Was it the quad not able to handle it? Was the hamstring not able to handle it? And that's why the ACL went. So yeah, you could go down the rabbit hole, and I don't think anybody has the answer just yet, but you go global view, and try to hit all of those different aspects, and hope and that it doesn't happen to you, right? It's likely, right? You're playing sports, you're still out there competing. So yeah, you just go through all of your checks and make sure that you kind of have all of those global conversations.
Well, the fact that you just listed off a whole bevy of things that are all in the form of an assessment makes me curious as to how do you assess your players? How do you assess your athletes, whether it's soccer specific or if it's general readiness? What kind of things do you do in terms of screens and assessments?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different things that we do regularly throughout the season. I've talked about the jumps. We've got the mid-thigh pull is our strength measurement right now. I'm kind of interested in the belt squat and seeing if that is maybe an easier test next season to get into. But then we have a bunch of force frame stuff that our PT looks at. So, I mean, he's getting every angle, all, quad. He's getting internal rotation, external rotation. We're getting long lever, short lever, adductor, all of the different ways that you could put somebody on a force frame. Then you can look at gait patterns like I've talked about, right? So put them on a treadmill and just, watch them run for a little bit. A minute is all you really need to see. Fitness levels coming in, we do the 30-15 score. So that helps me program once I get their score from their first preseason test, then I can program their runs for the next 6 weeks or what have you. And then I think it's a fatigue monitoring from there. So you can talk about wellness questionnaires. You can talk about Whoop or Aura. You have different players who prefer different ways for that information to get back to the performance staff. And it's just making informed decisions as you go along. 10-month season, you can't program every little aspect of it. So you just kind of have to go with your whole conversation of your whole department with the athlete and then make your decisions as you go on.
So when it comes to wearable tech, there's some sports that just rely upon the player to agree or not agree to disclose information about the data that's on there. How does it work in your sport?
Yeah, so we as a club provide Whoop, and the player gets to opt in. If they don't want to opt in, that's fine. We have a wellness survey that we would like you to fill out, please. But if you would prefer not to fill that out and you just want to wear this tech that we will provide for you, then that's fine as well. The NWSL doesn't quite have a rule on that just yet. Like I know MLB is pretty more hardcore, I guess to say, or advanced on that in the rules, but right now we just offer like, hey, this is what we pay for. If you want to wear it, that's cool. We'll give it to you and at no cost to you.
Nice. Okay. One thing we haven't talked about is language, a language barrier. Now I can see in MLS being a highly multicultural sport that there can often be loss of translation or you'll need to be multilingual. I don't get a sense that it's quite as the same with your league, and partly because the women's soccer is just so darn popular in the United States, and we've got some amazing athletes. So I don't see us really. I mean, I'm sure there's some European players, but how multicultural is your team? Do you have a lot of players from outside the United States?
This is the year that we're the most cultural. So this year we've like expanded and gotten players from all over, and so
Really?
this year has been the most challenging. Yeah, we have a 5 Brazilian national team players. We've got couple of Swedish, Zambian. So we've got Argentina, Spain. We've got a couple on the team,
Wow.
and this is definitely the most cultural that we've been since I've been here.
How is that for you?
Yeah.
How many languages do you speak?
Oh, just the one. Just the one, unfortunately. Yeah. Spanish in high school, probably should have paid a little bit more attention. But maybe Portuguese now that we have so many.
Portuguese. No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Okay. So do they have their own translators?
most of them speak English, so it's not a problem. There is the occasional, maybe talking something medical, an MRI or something like that you might need another player to help out. But for the most part, it's fine. They all speak English. There's, if I wrote up something weird on the board, that I've never written that exercise before, they're probably like, okay, what is that? Whereas other Americans would just be like, oh, okay, I understand that. I'll just, I understand the movement that you've just written up. But it's mostly been okay. Thankfully, no one, the players that we have brought in at least know English in a speakable manner.
Very cool. Yeah, I actually was not expecting that answer. I was thinking that it was not nearly as multicultural as others, but does that go across the board for most teams? Do you know?
I think it's getting that way. Yeah, the league is
Yeah.
expanding, and players are coming over from other leagues, and from all over Africa, Asian leagues, and European leagues, South American leagues. Like we're getting them from everywhere. So the league is
But
growing.
well, the league just expanded too, right? We've got Bay
Yeah.
FC out here, and we're
Yeah.
stoked on that. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just great. We got the Portland Thorns up north, and I love it. For fear of sounding sexist, there aren't as many female sports that I enjoy as a spectator as male sports. However, women's soccer is just freaking awesome. Women's World Cup, I can't wait for it.
Yeah.
I cannot wait. And I love going to any match possible. The level of athleticism is parallel, if not even better at times. So that's all I got to say there. Now back to the weight room though, because that's my domain as well. I would love to know how many non-sagittal loading patterns you like to place on your players. I mean, there's the pillars, right? There's the fundamentals where you're going to do squats and deadlifts. You're going to do some kind of sagittal press and pull and so on. But how much do you load along the frontal and transverse plane?
Yeah, obviously the adductor we try to hit in that realm. I like to call it climbing the mountain. So maybe the adductor is the easiest one to kind of go through. But like we'll start this season with just an isometric Copenhagen, and then move into like a slide board lateral lunge, and then move into a Cossack squat, right? So you climb up the mountain, getting to the middle of the season, and then you start to climb back down the mountain. So
nice.
it's there, but it's not. I maybe try to stick to like one or two, popping those in there just to make sure I'm hitting all of the patterns, and not just in one plane, right? So like I talked about with the box step down, right? I could do a box step up, or I can hit the lateral side. Hey, I just want you to stand on the side of the box, and I still want you to get that slow eccentric movement, right? And now I've just put you in a slightly different pattern. You have to use your glute med a little bit differently, right? So you can sprinkle those in where you can, and then you just kind of prioritize those a little bit differently for the goalkeepers. Maybe it's as simple as just reordering the exercises. So I don't need to change the whole program, since I've already got some sagittal, some frontal plane stuff in there for the field players. I'm just going to prioritize that one exercise. Hey, goalkeepers, I just want you to switch A block and B block. That's the only thing that I need you to do. Nothing too crazy. You don't have to get confused with what everybody else is doing in the gym. Just switch those two exercises and then move on.
Cool.
So yeah, that's kind of how I go about it.
And then as far as regen goes, is that like game day plus one? Is that where you do most of your restorative stuff? And if so, what's entailed with that?
Yeah, we love a game day +1 off. Games are late, right? We like to sleep in a little bit. So if you just have it off, then everybody just gets a mental recharge. Game day +2 is when we like to come in. For that region, for those field players, if we're keeping them inside for that particular day, which I typically like to do if we're within that 48-hour window, which happens on a home game, right? Day off and then you're back in. Whereas on an away trip, you have travel match day +1, you have an off day match day +2, then you're back in +3. You could take them outside for a little bit of a lighter session. But let's say we're home, right? Match day +2. I like to do a bike flush, just something real simple, maybe the last 10 seconds of a minute, right? Just I need you to sprint that, just get the heart rate up a little bit, but then for 2 minutes, just ride steady. We've also been playing around with BFR bike rides. So maybe it's just a 10-minute ride with the BFR, take it off, relax, let the blood flow come back, and then do it again. So we've been playing around with that. And then my go-to is I love a 1x20. So I put 12 exercises on the board, all different movement patterns, core, or it's mobility, or it's an upper body, or it's a lower body. And I just want you to do it once and then move on, 20 reps. So it just gets them to move. It's like disguised mobility, if you will. But they feel like they did something in the gym. So I love a 1x20, and that's kind of been my go-to for the last few years.
Okay. So in Florida, it's hurricane season. There's a hurricane category 4 bearing down on you. You're in the gym and you can lift anything up and put it in your pocket. What are the 3 things you're running out of that gym with before the hurricane hits?
Oh, from the gym? Oh man. Hopefully we've prepared and we've got the building locked down before the hurricane gets there. But if I'm
that puppy's going down. It's gone. You got 3 things to grab. What are they going to be?
3 things to grab. Probably grabbing the force plates, because you can do a lot with the force plates. Probably grabbing as many kettlebells as I can fit in the, maybe I get a van, right? As many kettlebells as I can fit in the van. You can get pretty creative with the kettlebells. And then the third thing, maybe you grab some sort of like maybe you grab like a slider or something like that, because you can do a bunch of different stuff with the sliders. Mobility, you can use them in your gym lift with the kettlebell, right? So yeah, maybe those would be my 3. You put me on the spot though. That's a tough question.
Yeah, it's always good. I could have done rapid fire, but that was even better. Okay, gliders. I love them myself. They're very versatile, like you say, mobility, stability, endurance. There's a whole bunch of things you can do with them. When it comes to mobility, flexibility, what are your top like 2 things you do with the glider? Adductors, I'm imagining some type of lengthening of the adductors or hip flexor combo.
Yeah, so when we're on the road, obviously we have what we have and what we bring with us, and sliders are an easy thing to travel with. So I love to just get them in a clock lunge pattern, right? So can you go forward, can you go to the side, and then can you give me that curtsy lunge coming out the other side? So I love that one, especially after flights and stuff. Just a good clock lunge pattern.
And that's going to be a lunging out on the glider, or more like a star excursion balance test where you're just reaching out?
Yeah, just more of a reach in front and then a reach to the side, and then that curtsy lunge coming the other side. So I kind of like that one. You can do some hamstring stuff on there. Like I said, some pulses I've really kind of been liking. So maybe you get them in a hamstring bridge and you go out to the very end, pulse at the edge, and then come back. That one's been kind of fun. And then of course you could do all kinds of thoracic stuff. We have a lot of thoracic issues, so can we get some reach throughs, type stuff like that, and get everybody moving again after the flight is preferable.
Okay, kettlebells. What are your top 3 kettlebells for a female professional soccer player?
I used to love a good Turkish get up. They were
everybody does.
They were fighting me.
Everybody but the athlete.
Yes, yeah. I loved a Turkish get up. They were fighting me heavy on that.
Damn straight.
I know. I've been playing a lot with. Obviously, I had a kid. He's a year and a half now, and a lot of what they talk about in postpartum is your stability, right? So some farmer's carry, some offset farmer's carry, single arm. And then can you just make it a little fun and add a resistance band onto it? So now you have some perturbations, right, while you're holding that kettlebell. And what I've kind of noticed is there are actually a lot of people that struggle with just bracing. And that's the first thing that you do postpartum is, can you just brace properly and can you hold that? So I love a good single arm farmer's carry, and then playing around with the different ways to do that. We do a lot of marching type stuff. So again, on that bracing, but do we front rack it or can we overhead hold that kettlebell? And now go through that. And then the other part, like we've talked about hamstring stuff a little bit earlier. One of the things that we read a paper on and kind of were like, all right, let's play with it, is strength endurance on the hamstrings, right? So you get your max strength with your Nordics, you get your max velocity with your sprinting. Maybe you're missing a strength endurance piece. So we kettlebell swung, I guess. We were doing some high reps, high volume as part of a block set, right? 15, 20.
2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes? How long?
We were just going reps.
Okay.
But anytime an athlete sees a 15, 20, 25 rep up there, I'm not very happy, but we were kettlebell swinging some high reps. And so I was kind of enjoying that and liking the adaptations we were getting off that. So some different bracing and some different kettlebell swing movements are probably my top two right now.
I'm curious, how do you determine proper load for the kettlebell? Obviously, movements, the quality of movement, but it's not like you can do really an RM test like you can on squat or bench. So where do you get started for that? I'm asking particularly out of just curiosity right now, because I've never really considered it.
Yeah, I may be a little untraditional in the gym. I give a lot of autonomy in picking the weights. So I don't give prescriptions that specific. That's where I really liked where the VBT came in. Like, hey, can I just get you to stay in this range? And then that range decides that. We haven't played with that on the kettlebell swing, but that is a self-selected weight for me. So and again, it's all dependent on how you feel coming off the game, coming off of travel, coming off the training session that you just came off the pitch, what you were able to do yesterday. Well, you just had a 2-hour session. Like, you might not be able to do that right now. Okay, so come down a little bit. I'm okay. As long as you're still moving the way that we want you to move and it looks a little difficult, like you're actually trying to do something. Sometimes I'll put on some stipulations like, hey, don't grab anything under this. But you can grab anything above this. That's fine.
That is a totally sexy answer, because it goes along the lines of what we commonly do here at our training studio, is that it is self-selected and it's based on the quality of movement, understanding that everyone, especially general population, is leading a chaotic lives, and the body is going to adapt either in a beneficial or not so beneficial way. And so strength levels are going to change. And to do a periodized program where you've selected it based on RMs is just completely ignoring that whole aspect of life. Yep. So, and then you brought in the VBT. I'm like, oh man, I really want some VBT right now, because that would totally help to narrow the parameters going, yeah, I know you wanted to grab that one, but it's just outside the range that your body is saying it's okay to handle. Yep. So that's awesome. Yep. I really love how you do that.
Yeah, it hits everybody in the spectrum, right? You have the gym rats who are like, I want to lift this. I want to.
Oh, like, no. It's, hey, you're down. Beyond. Yeah. You got to taper off.
Yeah. You gotta come down. And then you have the other end of the spectrum that's like, come on, you can do a little bit more. That looks really easy. And then now you have the iPad to say that tells me that was really easy. Not only just my eye, but now you have something data driven to help you believe it as well.
Right on. Okay. Best part of your job is what?
I don't have to sit at a desk, and I got to be outside in the sunshine for 2 hours today. And then you get to come in and immediately go into the gym, and we got some athletes that wanted a little bit extra. Like, I'm at the desk for maybe an hour or two every day. So it's a fun job.
Well, I got to get the sunscreen you use is remarkable, because it doesn't look like 2 hours of Floridian sun has even touched your skin. Meanwhile, I'm like this pruned California raisin that I haven't found the right sunscreen. So got to share that secret. Okay, and then the the thing that I don't say the worst part of your job, but one thing that you wish you could change?
It is long hours. Pro sports is a lot of time away from the family. Right now, I'm in a very blessed situation where my kid gets to travel with me for away games, and that's phenomenal. For the NWSL to allow me to do that.
Wow.
And when he's in school and stuff like that, maybe in a few years we're having a different conversation of like, man, probably just want to be more around him. Like, what do I need? Do I continue this job? What have you? But right now it's definitely the time away from family and the travel that can catch up to you really quick. But thankfully he gets to travel with me right now.
And your season's April to October?
That might be the regular season, but we reported in February, and we're going to make it to the championship, which would be the end of November. So long season. Yeah.
Wow. Against Bay FC, if they ever, get their head where it needs to be, but that's okay. We'll kind of it's early. We still got many months to go.
Yeah.
Christi, this has been amazing.
In a little bit, I think, as well.
Oh, I'm going to check the schedule because then I'll come knocking on your door. I'm really good with a front pack. I got 2 kids that are well grown now, and or I'll bring my wife along because she's just chomping at the bit for grandbabies.
Oh,
and just what we need, more surfers out in the water in Santa Cruz. But anyway, this has been great. If people want to follow your escapades or if there's other young professionals looking to follow in your footsteps, how do we do that? How do we follow you?
Instagram or Twitter is probably the best place. I'm not really posting on Twitter, but I am on it. I'll definitely read all the S and Cs. I think both of them are Christi Edson at Christi Edson, so I kept it simple.
Perfect. This has been a treat. I guess if I had one more question, it would be like, this doesn't seem to be your end game. This doesn't seem to be your stopping point. I know as much as you love being in the gym, so do I, but there's life up higher and higher. Do you want to be the performance director of a Major League Soccer team or National Women's Soccer League team?
I actually don't. So I know that may be a surprising answer. Everybody wants to move up. Everybody wants to be director. I'm in my dream job and I don't want to leave it.
Awesome.
So I will be a strength coach until I get pushed out, and I have to go do something else. But in my experience, listening to people that have moved up to director, the higher you go, the further away you get from the gym or from whatever it is you may prefer. And you got to deal with different conversations rather than just what you got in for the love of the gym. So maybe a controversial answer, but I just want to retire here.
That's the best answer. I think the American way is tarnished in that sense that you get somebody who does really well at what they do, and instantly you want to take them away from that and turn them into a manager or a supervisor. But I hope you and I stay in the gym for many decades to come, because talk about dream jobs. We live in our pajamas. We may eat out of Tupperware, but heck yeah, all we have to do is count to 10. Maybe in different world languages.
Yes.
Now. Yeah. But okay. Next time we meet, you're going to count to 10 in Portuguese for me.
Oh man, how's that? I'll have to practice.
This has been great. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for having me on. This has been awesome.
And that's it for the Zelos podcast for this week. I want to thank Christi for coming on, sharing all she did, as well as the Orlando Pride organization for allowing this to happen. Remember, when it comes to continuing education, you can go to rockysnyder.com. If you're an athletic trainer, physical therapist, chiropractor, strength coach, or personal trainer, we've got courses in person and online for you, rockysnyder.com. As well as Satanta College is a place to go for your Master's of Science. Hit that coupon code, get 10% off your tuition, RS10. In the meantime, remember, follow us on Instagram at Rocky_Snyder. Click the subscribe button, and we'll see you next week.